All right, so again, welcome and Shabbat Shalom. Um, I'm not going to go through all the etiquette. We pretty much go through all of that, or should have an understanding regarding background noise and muting our mics and things of that nature. Just be cognizant of what's coming through your microphone that the rest of us will hear, and just be mindful and either raising your hand and speaking when someone else isn't speaking. That's the basis of it. All right, so like I said, tomorrow we're going to talk more about part two of carnality versus spirituality. But as a refresher, one, I want to go over what we started with part one, actually, which was a couple of weeks ago, regarding the identity crisis. And I'll just read this as the same slide from before, how mankind suffers an identity crisis, not knowing who they are due to the iniquity, transgressions that brought sin amongst them. The sin is the essence of not knowing who you are and who truly created you and how. This is what was introduced to the inhabitants by man, the evil one, Hasatan, thereby causing such a dilemma and identity crisis for the chosen people as well as the rest of the inhabitants. That which you know yourself to be is that which you will operate in is how you identify yourself. That's a powerful statement in itself. You were perfect in your ways from the day that you were created till iniquity was found in you. Ezekiel 28:15. Had it not been for the iniquity and transgression of those before you that misled and misguided and taught you to think and believe on in carnality, you would have remained in your identity of righteousness with Yahuah. Since that didn't take place, your identity was stolen and taken from you for you to make your way back to Yahuah in spirit and in truth. Since that time, the world has been struggling with identity through double-mindedness, the tree of knowledge of good and evil that was introduced by the transgressors, leading the world into chaos and confusion and a severe identity crisis, especially for the chosen people of the house of Judah and the rest of Israel. I should add to that as well. To properly claim your true identity, you will have to learn and acknowledge who you are, what transpired to make you believe you were something other than the spiritual being you are. Repent and learn the ways of righteousness in spirit and in truth. All right. So today, one of the questions, then we spoke briefly about some of these things, but I want to go over, and I may have spoken to some of you individually more about some of this than collectively. So I want us all to be able to participate and sharing this knowledge and information. So my first question for you guys is, what are some of the areas you see affected by society suffering from an identity crisis, if anything? Anyone?
I I would say the for me what I'm seeing is the schooling. I mean, as far as the teaching, is definitely affecting that area. As far as the children knowing what they
And so the education system for our children, okay, and
yeah,
how is that impacting their identity?
they're not knowing they don't have the people in the know to tell them who they are and why they are here.
Okay. Anyone else?
Would you mind just clarifying the question for me so I can make sure I understand it?
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the areas you see affected by society as a world today suffering from an identity crisis, if anything? We know that if the world doesn't, and maybe I should clarify it this way. So one, do we believe that the world, has an identity crisis? That probably should be the first question. Do we believe everybody knows who our creator is and how we should be operating?
Mm-mm.
Let's address it that way.
No.
No, they don't.
So if we don't believe that, then how do we believe or perceive a society suffering from an identity crisis?
I would say the church has a big part to do with the identity crisis, what it's selling to its membership. In terms of, I was looking at something the other day on a minister, and he wasn't selling who the Most High God is. He was selling his thought process and what he perceives God as being. And so he was getting all the claps and the cheers and the amens. And so I think if we're looking at it that way, I think the church is a big part of why we have an identity crisis, because it's not selling who the Most High God really is to its parishioners. And then number two, the parishioners are not really seeking to seek the truth or to learn the truth of who our real God is. And so I think that is one of the reasons why. But if we're talking just in society in general, I think a lot of it has to do with people really not knowing who they are in the Most High God. So it's going to create an identity crisis, because we're looking for people to tell us who we are, what we should do, who we should be. And so that's going to be an identity crisis in itself, because we're not seeking to find out who we really are ourselves. And so I think that's where the identity crisis is coming from.
Okay.
I mean,
So-
this may be off subject, but here in South Carolina and in the United States, we actually have children who think they are cats. And to accommodate this, instead of correction, they're putting kitty litter boxes in the bathroom for the children to use.
Wow. Why do they believe that they are cats?
That's what they identify as. I mean, when I was younger, I identified as Spider-Man when I was running around the house. But I didn't take it out of the house because it was a game. They turned this into reality.
Mm-hmm. But we don't know why they believe that they identify that way as cats.
Because
Has
they're
that been?
allowed to.
Well, they're allowed to, but I'm curious as to a conversation with them as to why they believe. And how young of children are we talking about? Are we talking about elementary age school children?
From elementary to high school.
Okay, yeah. I would be curious as to why they believe that. What is it that they are seeing and understanding to identify? That's just for me. That would be my question. To identify.
Our society has made it a point that a child can identify whatever they want to identify as, and you can't say anything against it.
Well, yeah, as a spirit, but yeah, I'm curious. Well, because it sounds from what you were saying, now they identify as a cat, and then you said that they put out cat litter for these, so another part of society put out the cat litter. You said the school or the administration of schools are putting out cat litter for these.
That's correct. It's called complete acceptance.
Okay, I'm almost scared to ask, but I'm going to. So what are they doing with this cat litter?
The janitors are going in and cleaning it.
So they use it as a bathroom.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. I really haven't heard that. Has anyone else heard of this?
I have not.
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely interesting.
Sorry, y'all. I had to walk out of the dealership. That was a crazy statement. You know, the
Hold on a
majority
sec.
of people.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Zazma had her hand raised. Go ahead, Zazma.
I know Zeke said I mean, not Zeke, I know Quest said that he was in the middle of something, so he can go ahead and speak and then I'll speak.
Okay. Go ahead, Quest.
Oh, I was just listening to that statement and I realized that if you got people that are walking around thinking that they are cats, and you got people that are endorsing the aspect that they need to use cat litter as a means of them going to the bathroom, that's a problem. There, we definitely have an identity crisis because people's spirits are destroyed. Okay, the identity crisis is occurring is because people are not understanding whose shoulders this world is operating on. So therefore, the masses that are operating in this world are destroyed for a lack of knowledge because they do not know how the creator operates. So I just think it's bizarre hearing that kind of statement, and that you have teachers that are endorsing this said practice with children from the ages that I believe the gentleman Patrick, if I got it right, was saying, is just bizarre. You know, it just goes to show you that knowing which side of the fence you on is evident in knowing whether or not you have an identity crisis. So the sons and daughters of God that know their identity operate in spirit and in truth. Those that do not are operating carnally, which is why you have people like those said teachers and anyone else that can convince people that they can be anything other than what the creator has called us to be in this world.
All right. Cool. Zazma?
So, I actually have heard of what Patrick is speaking about because I have shared with you guys my line of work. And I have actually worked with individuals, and it's not just children, it's adults, it's a lot of people, and it's not just cats, it's lots of different things. But one of the things that I can say that contributes to the identity crisis, and I'm not even going to talk about the identity crisis of the world, because to me, I'm looking at the fact if they are in the world, then that's an indication that they're lost. So why am I going to be looking at people who I know are lost and of the world, thinking that they should know who they are or know whose they are or know who the creator is, because that is the reason why they are lost in the world, because they don't know that. When I look at people who are claiming to be of Yahuah, or to have or be in the spirit and of the spirit, where I see an identity crisis come into them for them is are the constant looking back into the world and trying to compare or even try to figure out what's going on in the world as if to make rhyme or reason of it. It's trying to look at the things of society to hold that up as a measure of how we should be acting, how we should be comparing ourselves, or how we should be conducting ourselves, or even trying to look at the world, look back at the world that we've left behind and cast judgment, because that is the thing that causes us either to look back with lust, look back in longing, and to turn from the direction that we are going. And that's what causes the identity crisis, because we're trying to walk a straight and narrow path while also looking off to the left and the right, but we can't do that. So for me, it's the again, if you are of Yahuah, what causes the identity crisis is looking to the standards or trying to justify or trying to make rhyme or reasons of what's going on in the world when you know that those people are lost. And if you are in the world what causes your identity crisis is the fact that you are in the world. And I've always been baffled when, even when I was in church, or in coming into truth, where we sit back and we look and we want to hold up and analyze the thoughts and behaviors of people who we know aren't in the truth, and then talk about and wonder what's going on with them, or why they're acting in a particular way when we know why. And that's just, but again, just holding that up is what can keep us in that double-minded state. So that's what I think.
Okay. So when I'm asking the question, I'm asking it more from when we see society suffering from those things, because we were in the world and because we did come out of those things, we had to identify certain things about ourselves, as I mentioned earlier. I think you weren't on the call yet, in regards to coming out from our traditions of men and religions and other things that we were taught, but our spirit wasn't satisfied. It didn't resonate with all of the things that were coming at us, or that was being mistaught and being miseducated by. So when we started to identify these things, we came out of that mind of thinking and believing and searching for who our creator is and how he operates, which then sets us apart from the rest of the world. So I think that's more, when we identify, for me, I can identify that the traditions of men, what I've been taught, both whether it's in the educational system, whether it's in religions, and this world being accepted or not accepted for various reasons, whether, because of my gender, my ethnicity, whatever, that society or this world places biases on, is why I suffered from certain identity crisis, not knowing who my creator is. So that's what I was getting more of. Yes, we do know that certain people have not identified why they think and believe in what they do. That's a big part of it, just like we did. And I think that, and I want this to be conversation, so I definitely want to hear back from you guys as well, because I believe that it's a challenge for many of us to have these conversations with other people, to assist them in helping them to understand who they are and who our creator is in them, so that they too can come out of their ways of thinking, knowing that Yahuwah's ways are higher than man's ways. Because many people have been browbeaten and admonished for things from a carnal perspective, of things that maybe they should not have been browbeaten for, or to believe in something that they should not have believed in. So presenting a different message and understanding and spirit and in truth of our creator are ways that we can, have conversations with some of these societies and people or individuals to help them through their identity crisis. We know in the first advent of Yahusha, it was recognized then, the healing of the sick. First, you have to identify that they're sick. You have to identify that they're blind. Most blind people today don't realize that they're blind, because they're looking from a carnal perspective that they can see with their iris and their cornea. That's not the blind that the scriptures are speaking to. So their thought process and understanding is totally different from when you have a higher elevated way of thinking and understanding that only Yahuwah and Yahusha can provide for us. So when we understand those things, now it becomes a matter of how do we get others to understand and believe, who our creator is and how he operates, so that their identity can now be in him and no longer in this world. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad, I want to hear more from you guys that are in the education system. I know Bobby and you, Zazma, and Patrick, or anyone that has, especially children still in school. You guys can speak more to what you are seeing that's happening in these, in this generation that's coming up today, and why certain things are happening, even in the household. Let's be honest, a lot of things begin at home too. So what's happening in the household as well to, that lead our children to believing and not knowing certain things. Because if the world is saying that, well, we celebrate Christmas, and the household is saying, well, I guess, I'm gonna celebrate it sometimes. I'm gonna give you this, or we can put up a tree this year and we can do this part. But no, I really believe in Yahuah and Yahusha. That's double-mindedness. So what does the child now think, or what does the child now do? What is the child going to now follow?
Well, I would just like to address that.
Mhm.
Again, it goes to what it is that you're still instilling, because the scripture says that we should train a child up in the way that they should go, so that they will not depart from their ways. And I can remember when my son was younger, and for a lot of the time, some of the practices that we had, we were not in the truth. However, Yahuah began opening our eyes, or opening my eyes, and showing me different things. So initially, my son was brought up where we had Christmas, and he didn't just have one Christmas because we often traveled. He had multiple Christmases in multiple different places. And I would say it was probably when he was about 4 or 5 years old when I sat him down and we were getting ready to travel. And I told him, we're not going to have Christmas. We're not going to have gifts. I had, let family know that we weren't going to have gifts or anything when we came, because one, it was too much hassle for us to travel with all of those things. And we just had a lot of stuff. And I remember just sitting down and talking to my son and telling him, at that time, what I understood the meaning of Christmas to be, that it was supposed to be a time of celebration for the birth of Christ. And so I talked to him about that. And so with that, it was a process of teaching and then helping him to understand what we believed as Christians at that time Christmas was supposed to be about, and that it didn't mean that we got gifts. And I used some very practical examples of, if it's your birthday, do you get gifts? And so with that, with me instilling that understanding into him, it wasn't an issue with him, because even when he was in school and they had certain things, then he didn't have a problem, even at a very early age, saying that he didn't want to participate in certain things because that wasn't what he had believed. As he has gotten older, he has still kept to those things and hasn't had a problem with looking at or saying these people receive this, or even they do this, or with now he's of an age where he's dating and his girlfriend doesn't necessarily believe the same way he believes, but he's been able to talk to her and her family and say, well, this is why I can't do these activities with you at this time, because this is my belief. And and that has brought about some change for him. But again, I think it goes to helping people, especially our children, when we are raising them, to understand that the standard that we are using is not the standard of the world. But in order for us to do that, we also have to make sure that the standard that we are using for how we raise our children is not the standard of the world. Because then that's where we're causing the double-mindedness in our children. Well, we're going to walk this way in Yahuah, but then we also have these things that are of the world, and I'm going to pursue those, and I want you to pursue those as well. So then that's where we teach them to walk on a double line. It has to be where we commit ourselves and our children in the ways of Yahuah, so that they do not depart from those ways. Otherwise, we are creating and instilling in them a double mind.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And that's basically, what I was saying in regards to, again, at home for the children is where it all begins. So until the parent changes, or the forefathers, and that's on the smaller scale from, the individual families or parenting, that's where it begins for most children. So what happens at home is, where it all begins for them, and also where it ends, where it should end for them as well. So that's good, for you, when you have come out of her, from what I'm gathering from what you're stating, is you then took action to execute this knowledge and information with your child so that he can now begin to understand, and you're seeing the impacts and effects of it. On the other side of the aisle, where people don't take that action, we're seeing what we're seeing now because they don't take that action, or they don't have that knowledge and information to execute those things, or they've made a conscious decision to continue down the path that they're going, to believe or celebrate Christmas and do those things with the double-mindedness, like you said. So those are some of the areas that do affect society, or individually, as well as the collective societies that we see today. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, and I believe that most of you have probably experienced the same thing, is coming up in households that taught us things that were wrong, basically, that you came into the knowledge of much later in life, that you now know the truth of the matter, or you're learning the truth of these matters, and you're operating differently. So you're going to operate in that which you know, which was on the previous slide. So that's why I said that, people operate in that which they know. So how you identify yourself, that's how you operate. So the carnal world will operate in carnality and the things that they know, without knowing who their creator is, and not knowing that they're a spirit being as well, and knowing the truth of the matter. They're going to operate in the world of lies. They're going to operate in the world of wickedness. They're going to operate in the world of everything that our creator is not, until they learn his ways and understand those things and adopt those things into their life, or become who our creator is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Cassie.
So, but yeah, so I raised my son. We came out, well, I came out of a bad marriage, and I raised my son, and while he was still young, like what, 3, and so we would have conversations and stuff like that, but he would also, and he was sharing information with me as well, and I'm looking like, how do this kid know certain things? Because he would say, well, I don't want to go into all of that, but yeah, he would say certain things to me, because we would talk about the Bible, we would talk about God back then, as while I was in the church and stuff like that. But he was seeing things on a whole new different level, to where some of the stuff that he would say, like when he would go and be with his dad on some weekends, he would say, I'd say, well, okay, you be a good boy, and I see you when you come back. Don't worry, Mom. He said, God's with you. He with you all the time. Don't worry about it. And I was like, well, okay, this is a little kid. So this little kid knows something that I don't know. But so that's how he grew up. We would share things with amongst each other, as far as how things are. And he knew that some of the things that they were saying in church as growing on up, he saw certain things that I didn't see. And then he would come back and we would talk about it. So yeah, like how you say, it starts in the home, and what you instill in the child will be projected as to how that child grew up, what that child endured, per se, some. But then on the other hand, as to this question that you was asking about the world, they knew this stuff all along, way back, because it happened back when Herod was trying to make sure that there was no boys to be living. So they've been attacking kids for a very, very long time. So it's just manifesting that they knew who Yahusha was way back then.
Mhm.
Per se, they would say God and Jesus. So they knew this. And so they tried to keep it hidden for so long. And now it's manifesting with the children now in the school system to where everybody is so confused, they don't even know which way is up, which way to go. And that's why they're allowing certain things to happen, certain things to do, to cause your standards to be lower than what they are. So they still continuing to tear the family apart. So this has been a constant thing all along. That's just my thinking.
Yeah, and I guess what concerns me about, what Patrick and now Zazma has brought up with that regarding being a different species is what's concerning. Not that you're a different part of just humanity, you're a different species altogether. That's what you identify as a different species altogether. So yeah, I'm still, kind of taking that in and dealing with it. But it's one thing when we're dealing with humanity and different things within our humanity, which we're going to talk about. But when you identify as a different species altogether, that's something I would definitely want to hear more about and understand why people identify that way. So definitely thanks for sharing that, because I really haven't heard that before. Not on the level that you guys have communicated. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, for me, and one of the things, even working in the sciences, which a lot of people find a little bit hard, that I believe, because I know or that we work with spirits and principalities, then when I'm hearing this, then it's not only with people who identify as different species, but also other things that are going on. I have a knowledge or an understanding that is not necessarily the person, it's the spirit that's working within that person.
Right. Yeah.
And that goes for anything. I mean, even when we're speaking about Yahuah, it's not necessarily us as an individual, it's the spirit that's working within us.
Exactly.
So when I hear that something is going on like this, then I don't question it. I realize that there's a spirit that's working within you. That's why you're identifying, or you're speaking, or you're thinking the way that you're speaking, thinking, or feeling.
Right. Well, and with those spirits, though, what comes from it is, it doesn't start with them. It came before them that allowed them to think that way. So it wasn't just out of, thin air that, we are where we are in our understanding. It began with transgression. It began with someone putting the idea and thought into your mind and into your spirit to now operate the way that you are. Just like with, you can't have sin without transgression and iniquity. Most people don't identify or understand those things. They believe that they're just sin because the way that sin is taught in the Christian church, they don't speak about what came before the sin, or they talk about just from the Garden of Eden that Adam, transgressed, or the iniquity of Adam is why the whole world is in sin. Now, what does that really mean? They don't address that because a lot of them really don't know what they're talking about. So from a fable perspective, it sounds good, and that's what they went with from a fable perspective. That okay, all of this, we're living this way because of Adam. That's what was always told in the Christian church. Every denomination and sect of the Christian churches that I've been in, they've never dived into where transgression and iniquity took place and how those things happen to begin the thought process and operation of why people believe and operate in the manner in which they do. And that is the important part of understanding our identity and heritage in our Creator, and not in the natural side of things, but from a spiritual side of things. How did these things manufacture or be presented to us? Because it was manufactured out of lies. to make people think and believe the things that they do. That's what transgression is. Going against the truth that now creates a lie and now affects the inhabitants of the earth, being the people. So, we have to keep those things in mind too. So that when I'm talking about addressing those things with kids, or anyone thinking of that they think that they're of a different species. And this is just my analytical mind too, and just how I try to be with people and get some understanding. I want to know, where did this begin? How, even with this spirit, or where did you hear this? Why do you believe that these things are true for you to believe that you need cat litter in a school for you to go to the bathroom? And now, and to see that spread, the overspreading of that now in the school, that, basically you have a zoo instead of a school.
Yeah.
But I'm sure when you look into it, and I don't know if you're necessarily saying that you're trying to figure out who came into agreement with the spirit. Was it the child that came into agreement with it? Or was it the parent that came into agreement with it? Or was it a grandparent that came into agreement with it? One of the things that I have seen is, again, it's whoever came into agreement with it got it out of society. When I'm looking at, and if it comes from a parent who's choosing that they're going to raise their children a certain way, because we deal with parents who talk about, when they had a child that some ideal that they got from the world, from what society said, that you shouldn't have gender norms, you shouldn't have women, you shouldn't expect this from girls, you shouldn't put these expectations on boys. So then they decided that, okay, I'm going to have a child and I'm just going to let them be fluid and neutral, and then they can decide whatever it is that they want to be, or whatever it is they want to do. Then now they come into an agreement with the spirit, because as that child starts to explore it, they're still going to endorse one thing or another. And a lot of times people, when we're sitting and we are analyzing, when we're going back and we're looking at this and we're analyzing, you can sometimes help parents or individuals or adults themselves see that what the choice that they are currently standing in and making, that they think was a choice of their own, was not a choice of their own. It was a steering of what they saw in society that was saying, if you think this way, then you're this. And they didn't want to be that. So then they felt that they're compelled to think another way. So again, I think when we talk about identity crisis or confusion, it again goes into looking at the world to define for us what it is that we are supposed to do. Even if it is that we're looking at the world that's telling us how we're supposed to parent our children, how we're supposed to raise our children, how we're supposed to conduct ourselves as men, how we're supposed to conduct ourselves as women, then they are giving us their false identity. And as children of Yahuah, we have to realize that there is no definition for anything for us within the world. Everything that we need is found in Yahuah. So then we have to learn, like we have learned together, that you have to go back to the word of Yahuah, and then that is the blueprint, and that is the way that we are supposed to define ourselves.
Right. No, yeah, we're saying the same thing. Yeah, and I think mine is just more individual to me, that because I've met all kinds of people, all walks of life, and having conversations, which is what most people, even in groups like this, you have a lot of groups out there now for, that understand the name of Yahuah and Yahusha, but a lot of them still operate very carnally in a lot of ways, which we're going to talk about, and it's growth for everyone. So I understand those things. I'm not saying that there's anything bad about them. It's part of the journey. Just like I still believed in, my earlier part of certain things in carnality, we pick and choose what we want to be. That's the way of man, not the way of our creator. But yeah, I guess again, for me, it's more of that. It's one thing for humanity. So like the first part of what you were just saying about humanity, it's different when you talk about gender identity, when you talk about ethnicity and all those things, that's still part of the human race. Now we're talking about a totally different species, which the spirit of the Most High is incarnated in humanity, or in humankind, not in a lion, not in cats, not in a dog. That is not where his spirit dwells. So that's why I was saying that. As far as I, you know, I'm just curious about where that teaching or understanding came from that is now leading now sounds like a big portion of our society to believe in these things, to believe that now there may be cats or dogs or whatever it may be, not just from a human perspective, but outside of humanity. So yeah, yeah. And I'm not saying that you guys should be thinking about that. I'm just saying for me, because you guys just enlightened me about that. And yeah, understand. I think it is open. I think it is open for discussion for, what you were just saying, and what I've been saying all along is having the discussion about, from a spiritual perspective, what is going on with us as a race, as a race of people, or species of humankind, to have that conversation. And a lot of that is lacking. Again, going back to what you were saying, Zaysma, is what you did with your child is not what a lot of people do. And that's been Bobby's struggle in his school. Because if he had more parents like you, or like, someone else, then maybe his job would be a lot different. And his students would be different. His teaching would be different. So it does go back to those things of what they're being taught, or where they get information, and then how they can communicate those things. Because all of us know we were all in school, and we were all subjected to different things that weren't going on in our home, at things in our home that our parents didn't teach us. So now we have to make some decisions if we're going to operate with what we learned outside of home, or what we're learning inside of home. Does that make sense? But yeah, we're saying the same thing. I believe we're on the same page with all of that. Yeah, it was just my thought process of really trying to reach people, to reach into the world, because we're not going back to thinking the ways that Hasatan thinks and believes, and guides people down the path that he is. We're trying to pull people up and out of those ways and those mindsets and understandings. All right. I want to mention something real quick too. So yesterday I saw a clip of something that I forgot. Well, I didn't really forget about the movie. It just hadn't been on my mind. Are you guys familiar with the movie The Imitation of Life that was done back in the 1950s?
Yep. I remember a lot of it. Yep.
Yeah, I saw a small clip of it, and it just brought something back to me, just watching it in regards to the young when the young girl, when she was in the classroom, and the mother comes, who's Black, but the child looks very light skinned or white. And when the Black mother comes, there's a whole change of events that go from there, with the child, with the mother, with the school, and all those things around, because of the ethnicity and what is perceived of this person. Do you guys remember that scene?
Yep.
So I want you to, for those that have seen it, I want you to think about those things that, in The Imitation of Life, and it's such a good name for the movie, in regards to how we live life and what really transpires within our lives based on the knowledge and information that's given, from various societies, traditions of men, science, and all of those things that are elevated, or tries to elevate themselves above who our Creator is. Because then it becomes just that, an imitation of life. It's not life, it's an imitation of it. So I just wanted to share that. So question number 2, do you see a difference in the chosen people regarding a loss in their identity? If you've identified or know who the chosen people are, Do you see a difference in the chosen people regarding loss of identity? And if so, is it from their natural lineage, spiritual lineage, neither, or both? And yes, there's stumbling blocks in a lot of these questions that I've asked, but
Sure is. Ooh, that's a good.
anyone? Any thoughts or
I have a thought.
yes?
My thought just I would say both, and starting with the natural lineage is if the people before you are lost, then you're not going to know your identity until you start to tap in, kind of like what we talked about in the beginning. So if if the person, if your parent or grandparent or whoever, if they're lost, then you're going to come behind them lost until you begin to learn who you are. And spiritually, if they're not spiritually connected with who they are, then it's the same principle, because they're not going to show you the route. So it would be until you started to seek him for yourself and really connect with Yahuah, and then that way. So it's almost like there's no connection to your lineage, whether natural or spiritual, if it's already lost from the beginning, then there's a disconnect of who you are. Hopefully that came across out the way I intended, but that's what I think.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'm thinking that we should see a difference in the chosen people when they lose their earthly or natural identity. Because at that point, then you're starting to see things differently. You're starting to act differently, and you're starting to engulf in understanding and wanting to understand who you are and who our creator is. I almost think it's like when the old movie They Live with Roddy Piper, when they started using the glasses to see what the world was really like, they started to act differently, move differently, and be more cautious of how they act towards the people that didn't know that they saw what the truth really was. And so I think you have to be different when you lose your identity in an earthly sense. And so doing that, you also lose your identity to other people, meaning people will see you different when you start to take on this walk. Because now the natural lineage that you had is broken, because those people are wondering what's going on with you, and are you crazy, or are you this, or are you that? And so, I think you have to, in terms.
You have to what? I'm sorry, I missed
you have that loss of identity in terms of the natural loss. Because it says, do you see a difference in the chosen people regarding their loss? And it, so that, yeah, they have to lose it, because it's different now. Like you said, when you take on this walk, you're going to be different. You're gonna come out, that natural man is gonna come off eventually. So yes, I think it's both in a sense, but I think you have to lose it, and eventually it won't be both. If that makes sense.
You have to lose which one?
That natural identity, that natural lineage. When you're one of the chosen peoples, you're gonna lose it.
All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, so for me, when the question, do you see a difference in the chosen people regarding a loss of their identity? When we're talking about the world, do I see a difference in them? No, because the chosen people, if they have lost their identity, then they're in a cloud of darkness, just like the world. So chosen people who don't know their identity look just like the world. It is when you begin to regain your identity, when you begin to regain your light, that is when you start looking different from the world. And that's when the world starts to shun you because you now don't look like them because you're regaining your identity.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that can go from the natural identity to your spiritual identity to understanding who your creator Yahuah was, because one, we have to first learn our natural lineage, who we are as a people, for us to understand that we are the chosen and what it means to be chosen. And then once we start understanding that, we begin understanding our spiritual lineage, and then we're able to be restored to our creator and receive our full light back. So I do believe when we do not have our identity, when it is lost, we do look just like the world because we are in darkness. But as we begin to regain that identity, then we start to look different because we are now coming from the darkness into the light.
Okay. All right. Good. So you're saying, just for clarity, you're saying that it's from both the natural and spiritual lineage, or that there's a difference? Because in the beginning, like you said, they were lost like the rest of the world, right? Is that what you're saying? That it's one, the other, neither, or both? Which one are you saying? Zayzma. Go ahead, Zayzma. You're muted if you're speaking. Are you there, Zayzma? All right. We'll come back to that. Anyone else on that question?
No.
All right. So next question. How do you see or understand the effects of your personal spiritual identity crisis as it plays out in your human experience? Do you believe it is predicated on your natural identity? And this kind of goes back to probably a little bit of what Zayzma was just saying. Anyone?
Is it possible you can like elaborate further on that question right there?
Let me see here. So with your spiritual identity crisis, first you have to identify that there is a spiritual identity crisis. From a spiritual perspective, how does that impact your human experience? Or from a natural perspective, if we operated, just in, say, carnality as the wild animals, we're just species in the natural form, they are without the spirit of the Most High, right? So there is no spiritual identity crisis that any animal has outside of the human race.
Okay.
So with being a mammal within the human race that we are in, that his spirit is incarnated in, if you experience a spiritual identity crisis, how is it impacting your human experience?
You're going to be going back and forth between spiritual identity and human experience, meaning that we're all spirits having the human I mean, we're all spirits having the human experience, but we don't have to let that human experience dictate who we are spiritually. Because everything spiritual does come out naturally. That's what he means when the issues of your hearts, will come out. But I think when you have that spiritual identity, it's hard to function with this human experience because there's going to be a conflict of being spiritual and trying to be human too much or too less, or being too much spiritual so that spiritual identity crisis, it messes the human experience up in terms of, because people are going to see you being double-minded, people are going to be seeing you lukewarm. So I think that's what I'm seeing when I see this question. You're not going to be spiritually stable and enough to handle this human experience because you're going to always revert back to one that's more comfortable, I think. And so I think I'm answering the question right, if that's my perception of what the question is asking.
Okay.
Well,
go ahead.
I would like to say, as far as it affecting, as far as my personal identity crisis,
Spiritual identity crisis.
Well, I'm sorry, my spiritual identity crisis. As far as I sit there and say, when I'm having a crisis, then that means I'm warring with myself. So I can definitely see where it would come over into the natural identity as well. If I'm answering your question.
Okay.
I just want to say something.
Go ahead, Larry.
We was always taught it was natural, carnal, but it was really spiritual, then carnal. So we always have a two-minded, because we always think it was carnal and then spiritual, but not knowing it was spiritual and then carnal. Whatever spiritually was the manifest naturally, but we was thinking of carnally and then it affecting spiritually, but it was never so. It was always spiritual and then carnal.
Right. Exactly. Okay. And does the scripture come to mind that you can't serve two masters?
That's what I was getting at. Yep.
So which master do we serve? And understanding the ways of which master, the master of righteousness or unrighteousness. And then with righteousness, where does that come from? In unrighteousness, where does the unrighteousness come from? And then how does that play on our human experience? Those are just questions and thoughts that I want to just put in your head and, for you to understand as we continue through the lesson tomorrow as well. But I want you to think on these things and get the understanding of why things have been going the way that they've been going, why you are where you are. Again, knowing, the reason why we're here, knowing Yahuah's plan of salvation, knowing the information that you should know now because you've been taught these things. Your understanding should be elevated to now understand things differently than someone that does not have that understanding. Right? So we should begin to see how things are playing out and being able to even identify other people's spiritual identity crisis based on what they know and what they don't know. Of course, Hosea 4:6, my people suffer due to the lack of knowledge, or, they suffer because of the lack of knowledge. So without knowing, you're going to go through a human experience of a lot of things that you should not have had to go through. Because if you know, you should operate in that which you know. Right?
So if you know better, do better.
Exactly. But when we don't know, both individually and then collectively as one body of people or of tribes and those that come from us, then there's a price to pay for that. Which we'll be talking about, not today, but we'll be discussing that in more detail as well. So a lot of times I know what I've been taught in the Christian churches and many others that I've looked at is that these traditions of men and religions really teach things on on a very micro level to hold you very accountable in and of yourself, which you are for your salvation. But there's also a macro level or a bigger picture level for you to understand what your spiritual lineage has done to place you in the bondage that you've been in. Because had that not happened, you would not be in the position that you suffered from, both spiritually and naturally. And again, understanding the reason why we're here in Yahuwah's plan of salvation, you can see all of those things just like he saw. Remember, in the beginning, when we talked about Adam, and as we go through the truth regarding of Adam and Eve, the truth regarding the Garden of Eden, eating from that tree of good and evil brought on a lot of things for that which was to come next. Prior to that, life was good, right? You were perfect until iniquity was found in you. Iniquity started when you really identify and know what the tree of knowledge of good and evil is, when it took place, how it took place, and why the events that took place after that has now trickled down to where you are today. That's the goal, to get that understanding. All right. Does that make sense? Because hopefully you guys know that it ain't got nothing to do with an apple, and ain't got nothing to do with a snake in the wild. Hopefully you know that. If not, you're going to learn that.
I know it now. I'm just saying, I know it now.
All right. So question number 4. As you interact with people daily, what do you see that may be due to a spiritual identity crisis? Well, we just spoke about one with what goes on in the schools and kids thinking that they're cats, or people thinking that they're cats, and other things. What are some other things that you see, or even in the news, or what's happening today in the world? What are some of the events that you're seeing on a daily basis?
Oh, I think it's always unnecessary killings.
What's necessary?
You and me and Quest talked about that. It's not necessary, but it's just something I would consider, but it's not necessary. So no. Killings, misguidance in terms of fooling people so people can keep their money in rulership, false doctrines in terms of, like I said, school, life, YouTube, and all those things. So those create those messed up identities. And even in some homes and societies, not all homes, but in some homes. So I think seeing that, and also the news. I never look at the news as much, because all it does is promote violence and promotes other things that are not good for our spirits. They promote dividing of races and nations, and so it's just those things that I think create those spiritual crisis in people, and for those of us who get caught up in it, us.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah. Sometimes I think, and I feel with this one special individual that I, see pretty much on a daily basis, wants attention, attention grabber, wants everything to be about her, to where she fabricated this thing that had happened to her so that she can get pity from others. So in order for her to get out and do what she needs to do, she'll fall back on that same little line so that she can have people to feel sorry for her. And I'm about at the point where I'm about to say, stop it. What you're doing is not right. So you need to stop that. But yeah, so it's trying to manipulate people to do a certain thing.
Mhm.
Not trying to put her stuff out like that, but yeah. So yeah, manipulation. So yeah, she's having.
So we know from manipulation and spiritual identity crisis, we know that can't be of our creator of righteousness, right? We know
Right.
that the
Right.
father of lies, the evil one, will, he's very manipulative. We know that he's cunning and
Yes.
conniving and all of those things. So that spirit that dwells in her
Yes.
comes from, we should be able to identify, we know it's not of Yahuah. That's not of his
Yeah.
spirit, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right, good.
I would like to say something.
Sure.
What I see is even when people is like some of the people that's even coming into the truth, even when you sit there and break it down to them, they still choose Satan.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
They still choose him. Also they actually choose their self, especially if it ain't lining up with what their goals and their will is.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And the strongholds, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
And then I see like strongholds where people's belief systems is so powerful that it's causing trauma. It really is. It's causing trauma to the point where they're trying to force people to do things against their own free will because of what their belief system is.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah.
Being comfortable in what's familiar. That's where a lot of it goes. Not willing to change.
Mm-hmm. So the lack of renewing of the
Comfortable
mind.
with, comfortable what's familiar to you instead of venturing out into a lake. If you in a pond, so yeah, you're not going to go into that lake. You're going to stay in that pond because you're
Right.
familiar with that pond instead of the lake.
Exactly. So I know. Let me put this out there because I know that hopefully we can see it a little bit differently from a perspective of things that we have witnessed or have seen on whether it's TV, social media, or whatever. We can see or understand that a lot of times when you raise, and I've used this example before, when you raise an animal from a wild animal, whether it's a bear, a lion, a tiger, from birth, a cub, you can raise that animal, and that animal will not come against you, right? Typically, that's the case.
Right.
They, so they identify, with who you are because you have raised them, you have nurtured them, and they're not going to come against you. The same thing with our pets for the most part, whether it's a dog, cat, whatever the case may be. They know that there's, they recognize, even though they're not spiritual beings, they recognize that they're not going to bite the hand that feeds it, that knows it, that nurtures it. That's not what they're going to do. However, the smartest, supposedly smartest species, which is supposed to be humankind, does exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? We bite each other, we will bite the hand that feeds us. We won't operate in truth. We hate on each other within our same species of humankind.
Sure do.
We use excuses and to have biases, and these are things that stemmed from the transgression and the separation and division of the churches, of religion, of ethnicities, and all those things that make people think that one is elevated over the other. And that's the struggle of the world. And whoever has the most money is the winner, basically. Right? And we see that today. It's been the case since the building of the beast, which Daniel talks about in the colossal statue. Starting from, well, even before the Roman Empire, but everything regarding the colossal statue that Daniel speaks about is that very thing. And that's the one mindset that people follow. And they follow it, you know, like I always say, people follow the money. Wherever the money is, that's where people's minds will go. Wherever the riches are, that's where people's minds will go. So when the Roman Catholic Church was ruling the world, that's where, you know, they had the money, they had the power, everybody was Roman Catholic for the most part. Then they broke off from that into the Protestant churches, you know, into the Church of England and all of that, you know, their monarchies and all of that. The money was there, people followed the money. Even through slavery and all of that, people followed the money. Then what broke off from the Church of England was these divided snakes, United States. And people followed the money. We have the highest GDP, you know, they brag about being the world superpower and all of those things. People come from all over the world to come to this country because of money, for survival, even from a natural perspective. But they spiritually follow these things and everything that comes with it. They think that they don't a lot of times. And I can tell you, I know people and I have friends that, you know, are from different countries here, from different parts of Africa and you know, Africa and Asia, Europe, whatever. And some of them will say, oh, I'm only going to stay to, you know, make this money and I'm going back home. And I'll, you know, a lot of times I'll say, no, you're not. You're not going back home, because you're going to find yourself, you know, falling prey to all of the things that appears to be good here. And you're not going to make your way back until it's very late in life or too late, or you're going to decide, you know, you're just not going. Yeah, you may build a home back in Africa, this, that, and the other. Of course, you're going to do all those things, but you're pretty much going to remain here. What does that say about you? What does that say about your spirit? And what are you following from that perspective? You think it's just from a natural standpoint that you want to build a house, you want to do these things back home and send money back home, but there's a price to pay for all of that. Because you wind up believing in some of the things that are taught to you while you're here. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm not saying that it's all bad. I'm saying you wind up adapting to a lot of the ways of the weak, especially when you're weak, when you don't know any better. And over time, this is what happens. People fall prey to your children. If you wind up getting married or whatever, or having children here, guess what? Then now they're next in line to believe, because they've now been born here. They believe in pretty much what they know, what they see. They're a product of their environment and what's being taught to them. They may not know Africa. They may not know Asia. They may not know any other part of the world and what was in the generations before, spiritually and naturally. So we have to keep those things in mind as well. Does that make sense? Does any of that make sense?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So question number 5, as you see things unfold relative to matters of this world, do you see it as an identity crisis? And if so, how? You know, I'll lead it off just a little bit with, a lot of people see or understand that something is happening, something is different. They can't put their finger on it. They'll say that we're in the end times, but they can't really prove it because they really haven't studied themselves to show themselves approved. But in their spirit, they know that this must be the time of the end because of these events that are taking place. They do know that part, right? So as these things unfold that they're seeing, my question, do you believe that it's due to what, people now didn't know before, basically, an identity crisis because of what you followed before that led to this and where we are and what's next and what's coming?
You was going in and out. Can you repeat that last part?
So with, I don't know which part was out, but with the matters of this world and and what people are now seeing and experiencing, do you believe or see that they are recognizing that it may be an identity crisis within themselves and what has transpired before that leads to what's about to happen? Because like I said, a lot of people are recognizing that something is happening. They do feel in their spirit, even though they can't prove it, via the scriptures or anything else, because they haven't studied those matters and they don't know, and it hasn't been taught to them yet to know exactly what was already prophesied that would come spiritually would manifest naturally. Do you believe that now people are waking up and seeing that there was an identity crisis that was going on that led to where we are today?
From my standpoint, I think a lot are, but it's less than what I would say, it should be. I see a lot of people coming out and understanding that what they believe wasn't the truth, but I still see a lot of people hanging on to their identity crisis because it's uncomfortable. And a lot of times they don't want to be uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's why a lot of people hold on to sin and deny Elohim, because it's more comfortable to stay in sin.
Well, they don't. The thing is they don't know what sin is, because sin is spirit. They've been taught that sin is one thing, just like everything else about their identity. They've been taught all of these things are natural. They've been taught that who you are, you're black. For me, I'm what's labeled in this country, African American, this, that, and the other. Do I identify that as a person or individual? No, I identify really for me as something different, of a child of the Most High. My spiritual heritage is in Him. And those that love me, just like the Most High says, and just like Yahusha in His first advent, those that love me, I love them that love me. It's not about my skin color. I love people. I do recognize color. I do recognize ethnicity. That does not stop me from, loving a person because of their differences in skin color or ethnicity, race. That's craziness to me. But that's where people are, I understand, in their walk and in their journey, because they can't identify the spirit of who's inside of me. When you see me as a spiritual being, you should not be worried about all those other things. And that's the problem. We don't see each other as spiritual beings. We see each other as a cat, as a lion, as a tiger, as a dog, as a Rottweiler, as a poodle. That's how people identify and see each other, to now cause the war. Just like this is why the Most High talks about that how these Gentiles treat people like wild animals. Wild animals of different species fight all the time. They eat each other up all the time.
Animal kingdom.
So now it's manifesting, huh?
Exactly. But here we are of one species of humankind, and we're acting like wild animals of the wild kingdom, just like Latricia said.
The human race act worse than the animal kingdom.
Of course they do.
That's what I see.
Right. That's my point. And that's the point of the Most High.
Which is again
the reason why we're here. He placed us here. He incarnated His spirit into us, regardless of your color, to play out His plan of salvation for your spirit based on who you are spiritually. You were not black, white, or anything else, male or female, when you were in the spirit with Him in times past, nor will you be those things in times present if you make your way back to Him. And so then, if that's the case, what came before and what's coming after, why would what comes in between be any different?
Right, because He don't change.
Right, exactly. But because we know that this is His plan of salvation, that He's restoring His spirit, and He's putting people through, it's all a test. And it's based on things that we've done in times past regarding your spirit. And the best way to do that is put those people down there and make their way back to me in spirit and in truth. So until you can recognize each other by your spirit, this is what you're going to wind up dealing with. You're going to deal with hates and biases and all those things. I see you because you're white. I see you because you're black. And I don't like you because you're white, or I don't like you because you're black, or because you're male, or because you're female. This is why males used to beat up their female counterparts. That's been a big part of society that people want to erase and forget. Just like the slave trade. You can't erase what has happened. It's the truth of the matter. Now you have people, a bunch of black people talking about they hate white people. That's crazy. Why? Because of the position that we put ourselves in, not knowing the truth of the matter, number one, and because the world had its way with us for us to come out on the other side of this. That's his plan of salvation, because we didn't do what we were supposed to do. But all we see, is the black and white, male and female, and the sex war, the gender war, sexual orientation, all those things that have nothing to do with who our creator is and how he operates and how we'll get back to him. So go ahead, Latricia.
Oh, what I was gonna say is that I don't even hate people, but not necessarily for their skin color or whatever. It's about how they treat me. So if you're sitting there, like if my life is in danger, I am gonna judge you by your spirit. I'm not judging you by, okay, you might be a black man that's sitting there doing it. I don't care nothing about your color or anything like that.
But yeah,
it's about your spirit at the end of the day.
Right. Well, and this is the problem that, I see all of this always playing out, and people want to talk about Black Lives Matter. The other side, everybody else want to say all lives matter. Are any of them wrong? No, they're both right. All lives do matter. All spiritual lives matter. All natural lives matter. But, and I understand, black folks are saying that Black Lives Matter because it didn't matter before. Okay, that's a very valid point, and it needs to be looked at. Why are these group of people saying this? And the other side needs to say, I can see and understand why you're saying that based upon what has transpired in the past that leads up to some of these events that have happened to your people. There needs to be an understanding so that you can form a relationship of the spirit in understanding these matters. But all lives do matter. But a lot of black folks don't want to hear that all lives matter. All they want to hear about is that their black life matters. And that's crazy. See, and most people, of course, of my own ethnicity will reject that because of who they are in their spirit. And that's a problem. So until and it's just like in a relationship, whoever your partner is, from male, female, whatever the situation is, if you have a partner and you're not willing to understand who they are and how they operate, and they don't know who you are, you're going to always bump heads. You're always going to have a bunch of conflict. And if you think that you're over the other in the aspect of what has been taught from an animal perspective, that's going to cause problems. And it does oftentimes. Now, am I saying that some traditional values aren't good? No, of course they are. In certain matters, you have to have that conversation to understand who your partner is and how they operate in the spirit in which they are, so that you're equally yoked with what you're doing as a couple. But most people are not, because they go into this government marriage, and we know that the government is riding on the shoulders of Satan, because nobody had physical certificates of marriage and all of that until that stuff was instituted. Yes, the scripture speaks of it, but the scriptures are talking from a spiritual perspective when you understand the concept of what marriage is. He doesn't care about who you marry other than himself. You are to marry unto him. He's worried about your marriage to him, not your marriage to one another and different genders and interracial marriage. See, but people get hung up over that. And people will condemn you and judge you based on those things. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I saw something on social media. This guy who is biracial, and he has a large following, and someone thought that he was 100%, basically 100% white or either Puerto Rican. When they found out that his father was black, they disconnected from him, or unsubscribed, and and blocked him. But prior to that, you subscribed to him, you liked his content and all of this until you found out that he was biracial, and and his father was black. That's a problem. That's crazy. But that's how people operate. And we see these things playing out all of the time. Now, what spirit is in that person that does that? That's the next question that needs to, come to play. Is that a spirit of righteousness that you like my content, you liked who I am as a person, until you found out that naturally my father was of a different ethnicity whom you obviously seem to have a problem with. This is what goes on in this world. And these are things that can be proven just like that. We can see these things play out over time, over the last several centuries and thousands of years, how these things have caused there's a cause to every effect. That's the manifestation thereof. The cause is the spirit, the manifestation is the effect. But most people don't put those things together because they're looking at the cause of being something natural, not spiritual, and the effect of being something natural and not spiritual. When the scriptures tells us that we will judge things the spiritual things upon spirit. Does that make sense? Do you guys see these things as they unfold?
Yeah.
Yes.
Y'all got quiet. All right.
I'm just listening to the teacher talk. That's all.
All right. So how do you guys identify when someone asks you regarding your spiritual beliefs?
I always identify with who the spirit is within me, but I think a lot of people, like I've always encountered, try to tell me who I am and who he is in me. And so now it doesn't spark the conversation that I used to have. I used to try to prove them wrong and things of that nature, but now I just let the spirit shine through. And so that it won't be any, discrepancies, or it won't be any conversations. I just let the spirit shine through, because like I said, trying to explain to them who you are spiritually doesn't work, because they're going to watch what you do. They're going to watch how you do it. And so I just let the spirit shine through.
So do you answer their question? Or, they're going to watch anyway.
Oh yeah, I answer questions, but like I said, you and I have talked about this before. When I encounter certain people who just don't want to change their mind, or who still gonna tell me who I am based upon how they see it, then there's no conversation at that point.
But for you, what do you tell them who you are? It doesn't matter what they think, but as far as your identity and what you know, and you tell them, they're asking you, how do you identify, regarding your spiritual beliefs? How do you identify yourself?
Well, I'll say this. This is how I identify myself to the people I've had that conversation with. I always say that the closest thing you're going to get to seeing the Most High God in the physical is standing in front of you. And then I kind of let them ask those questions that they want to ask. Because one person said, "Are you telling me you're God?" I said, "You got to figure that out." I said, "But here's the thing. Let's try to go through some things and let me show you who I am spiritually. So you'll see that the closest thing to the Most High God in this physical form is me that you're talking to." So I kind of want to engage them. But that, like I said, I've stopped because some people just gonna tell me who I
am. Okay. Anyone else?
I tell them I'm a son of the Most High.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And then if they ask why, then I sit there and tell them the protocol I went to
Okay.
get to where I'm at.
All right. And no one else has anything. Larry, we hadn't heard from you. You there?
Yeah.
You've been real quiet today. So how do you identify if someone asks you of your spiritual belief?
I say I'm a son of the Almighty Father.
All right. And then when they say, well, what does that mean?
You go through a process, coming out of her, starting to get the truth.
Mhm.
Because it has some truth and it has lies.
Mhm.
And then spiritually, as I was saying before, we are thinking less carnally and not spiritually. We are getting to know the truth now and know it spiritually, then carnally. Whatever manifests in the spirit whatever happens in the spirit will manifest carnally in the natural realm. Yeah, that one.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, I say I'm a daughter of the Most High God, the creator of this whole world. I say, and I believe in righteousness. I say you got two sides. You can be on the righteous side or you can be on the unrighteous side. So take your pick which one you want to be on. Be on the righteous side, you could become a child of the Most High God. Stay on the unrighteous, you're going to be up on the say.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you guys if you've experienced this, because a lot of times, because many of us have been beaten up and all kinds of stuff throughout these other traditions of men and churches and things that claim that they believe in the scriptures of the Bible, but they teach contrary to the Most High. When other people hear that you believe in the Bible, you just don't believe in the perspective of Christianity and others that have taught very carnal and a context that's not of our Creator. How do they take that?
I was called an atheist.
Huh?
I was called an atheist.
How would that be the case if you believe in the scriptures?
Well, that's the thing. When you sit there, I mean, for me, when I sit there and tell them I believe in the scriptures, but I don't believe in how it's being taught in these different religions, off top, they're going to either call me an atheist, an antichrist, the name, I'm crazy. It's name calling.
Right. All the things that they called Yahusha in the first advent.
I've even had someone tell me that she's not going to listen to anything I say because I don't believe in Jesus or on Jehovah. So it's interesting because I've said, like, I believe what this book says. I just don't believe in what y'all believe in terms of the things that y'all say in terms of he rose on the third day. He told us to worship on Sunday. He said we're supposed to go to a church building. These are all the things that they were, saying that they believed in. And I'm like, I just don't believe in that. And then she said, well, I can't listen to anything you say when it comes to this book because you don't believe in Jesus and he rose on the third day. And so when I told her, what if his name wasn't Jesus? Would you consider even thinking about that? I ain't consider that. Like I said, I don't want to talk to you after you said you don't believe in Jesus or his name is Jesus. So that's what I've been.
Well, he does rise on the third day. But if, the conversation that she doesn't want to have is if he rose on the third day, according to your doctrine, your Christianity doctrine, 72-hour period, means that you would have been in the kingdom for the last few thousand years and you haven't been. That's what you're saying, according to your doctrine. Is that what you believe? Do you believe that the world has been in the kingdom on earth since that time? Yes or no? And she, you know, people don't want to have those conversations because they don't want to understand that his time is not man's time. Someone played some trickery on you and bamboozled and beguiled you, and you really don't want to learn and understand the truth of the matter. That's the conversation she's not willing to have. Just like I shared with you about a guy that I know that said he didn't want to compromise his faith. It's already compromised. You know that it is. That's why you don't want to talk about it, because you can't stand tall and strong in what you think you know, which is why you want to shut it down. If you're confident in that which you know, you want to have conversations. In righteousness, you want to know the truth at all costs. Someone that doesn't want to know the truth at all costs, there's a problem. And it shows in their actions by wanting to shut it down. So for you, Bobby, you know, she doesn't want to talk to you because of the, you know, if you don't acknowledge Jesus and Jehovah, not knowing where those names come from, not knowing when it started, not knowing all those things have now put you in a position to be in the broad and wide gate to, you know, a pathway to destruction. But you don't want to talk about it. That's what she's telling you.
Exactly. And my nephew, he chimed in with him. Like I said, he's in the seminary school. And I told him, I said, it doesn't mean that you guys aren't likable people. It just means y'all got a false doctrine that you just gonna hold on to. Because he's in seminary school and he really thinks, and I'm like, man, you really got it screwed.
Right. So nobody that wrote the scriptures were in seminary school.
That's what I asked him. I asked him that.
None of them were theologians, and all of this false manufactured, you know, stuff that they've come up with since that time to twist it to make people believe in their natural carnal perspectives. And my first question to them is, are you saying that the writers of these scriptures, of the Dead Sea Scrolls and you know, and all of them did they go to seminary school? Is that what you're saying? And if the Most High doesn't change, and he's the same yesterday, today, and forever, what makes seminary school the right thing today when it wasn't the right thing before?
When I asked that question,
what does that have to do with someone's spirit? Even in a university, going to college and university, what's that have to do with someone's spirit? Why does that make someone smarter? You know, think on these things, that it makes you pray to what others want you to do. They will have you pay out the yin yang to go to college or university, whatever, to build into, you know, to pay into the economic system, to pay back all of your student loans if you didn't have grants and scholarships and all that. And they know that they got you. You're going to buy a house and pay these mortgages and get you a car and put your kid through school. You're going to do all those things to facilitate what they want you to do and understand things to keep an economic system up that is on the shoulders of Satan. That's something that most people don't want to hear. Most people can't think or beyond the thought of, well, how is the world supposed to operate? The world operated that way without this world system. They're thinking that the one world order is to come when the one world order is already here. They're thinking all of those things that the scriptures talk about regarding the Great Tribulation, which is what we have been going through, that they don't even recognize because they don't understand a world other than this, thinking that this must be heaven, and when it's hell a lot of times. That we can't love one another, that we don't abide by the two greatest commandments, and that you're only worth what you can provide when you make some money and pay off to somebody else. And when you die in this country, it's not over. We're going to hold your estate and hold your family and all of that accountable to get every piece of penny we can get from you. You're telling me that's of the Most High? You're telling me that comes out of seminary, your seminary school. That's what you're telling me. So just think on these things. Make them think on these things. This is why people are so materialistic and think that everything revolves around the money, which is the love of money is the root of all evil. The love of it. Who instituted something based off of the love of it?
Satan.
Exactly. Yes, it doesn't mean that money's evil. Yes, we're going to always have money. Money's always going to be here. A bartering system will always be here. But what comes of those things? The wars that have transpired, the rumors of wars that have been spoken about, well, those wars have been here. World War I, II, and Vietnam. I mean, all of these wars and we're going to be talking about all of that. So that should have been a big clue. Those wars are about nothing but money.
Yep, money.
Those
great.
wars are about nothing but taking over for power, rulership, and money. How long has the earth been here before that, before mankind started all of that? Those wars. Before digging into the earth to pull out the natural resources that have been there all along, the diamonds, the gold, the other minerals and things that, they prostitute out to the people, and put some dollar value to it so that they can make money off of. They sell you land that's not theirs. The earth has been here. Who made you the king to say that you can sell this piece of land for someone and make, $200, $300, $400, $500,000 off of it? But look at what the world does. Oh, I just bought me a new house, and and we're guilty of it because we had to have somewhere to live, especially in this country.
Interject something when you said that about buying a house. Here in Colorado, if you buy a house, you don't own the land. You just got the house and that's it. The land still belongs to the state. So it's not yours, even though you bought the house per se and your house is sitting on a piece of land, that's not your land. And whatever resources that's there under your house belongs to the state. It don't belong to you.
Isn't that the same concept of tax when you paying taxes or when we paying taxes out for property? Because I know in Virginia the property tax, as far as the cars and the houses that I have, I still have to sit there and pay property tax on that alone. And that doesn't make any sense to me, being that I don't pay for it.
Well, no, yeah, those taxes are totally separate. It has nothing to do with the purchase of the vehicle or the purchase of the land. It's just like here, just whether it's in most of the states that have state taxes or real estate taxes that you pay on your house or your home, typically funds like here in Georgia, it funds the educational system. A lot of it goes to the public school system, and the other parts of it go to fire departments and police, stuff like that. But a lot of that is even handled from a local level. So it's all of these divisions down to all of these different taxes that you pay to fund all of these privileges, basically, that we have. But that's on top of what you've already paid out for your house. Which is, all of it's, this is what I want you to think about, before the transgression of what has been done before, civilization has always been here. People have been here and they were living here on the earth in harmony before the division and the craziness, and they were gone. When they left, it was over. When they died, it was over. We can go back millions of years into dinosaurs and things of that nature. When they were here and they died, it was over. Nobody's taxing them. But look at what man does. Man will rape and rob you of everything that you have and what you don't have to keep their economic system and to line their pockets and do their evil will against the Most High and keep the truth from you, to understand that all of this belongs to the Most High anyway. It ain't had nothing to do with them. This is why it's difficult for a rich man to get into the kingdom. It, as the scripture says, a camel could go through the eye of a needle before a rich man can make his way into the kingdom, because they don't want to give that up. So it's a thought process and understanding that many have, that money is the ruler and regulator. And they have most people today thinking those things, that if I have money, just like the movie 2012 depicted it very well, that money's going to get you, out of here, going to get you in a safe place. No, money's not. And it depicted that with one of the rich guys that fell to his death thinking that he was going to make his way in. But is money bad? Again, no, money is not. It's how it's utilized and used to manipulate people and to get them away from who their creator is and how they operate to facilitate their wicked deeds. That's what money has done. And you're living in the effects of what was done before from the transgressors that led to all of that. All right. All right, so next question. Why do you believe people don't like to address the matters of religions, traditions of men, government, and politics?
Because it's going to shake their foundation. I mean, for the ones that I sit there and be able to sit there and talk to them about what it is concerning the Most High, they, when their foundation is shaken, I mean, some might want to fight you. They might, I mean, some might want to sit there and turn into lying on you. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
And so they won't just stay like complacent. They just want to stay in the rut and the situation they in. That's what I find.
All right. Anyone else?
I think it causes conflict. And so a lot of times people want you to believe, do, say, be the way they are. And I've always to, for me, be different. And so it causes conflict. And it won't let you see the other person's point. I think Malcolm X said, best for me, if you leave your religion and all these other things at home and try to come to an understanding of, let's look at us being people first, and then we can get to those other things. Because right now, you're going to dislike Zeke just because he said Yahuah, and I'm still saying Jesus. I hadn't even gotten to know Zeke. All I know is that he don't believe in Jesus. And the bad part about it is he does believe in the Most High. We're just not calling him Jesus. And so I think it's going to cause so much conflict that it causes hate and separation, because some people are unwilling, like you said before, to reason when we're having conversation. Let's reason it out and see what the truth is, because the truth, it doesn't need help. It don't need anything to stand on. Once we come to the truth and we understand it, then that's where we can go from. But people, it's going to cause conflict and other things that people may be uncomfortable with going through.
Yeah, the only difference, and this is something that I see constantly being addressed now. One, Yahuah is not Jehovah. And it's not just about calling the name, it's about understanding that you're serving different gods. So someone calling on Jehovah or calling on some other name, we're not serving the same God. So that alone is a conflict. You're right. But a lot of people think that it's a name game. No, it's not just about the name. His name is more, his name is the start of the understanding. His characteristics and the fruits of his spirit are not in, they definitely are in Jesus. from the fruits of his spirit in Galatians 5:23 and through, you know, through 25. They're not in all these other graven. I mean, again, we can call on the lawbreaker stuff that these other religions have done that cannot be of the same creator of the scriptures of this Bible. And those are the conversations that they don't want to have. And it does cause conflict, especially in the workplace and the governments that are riding on their shoulders. So that's why at, you know, most corporations and places of work, you know, they tell you not to have those conversations regarding, you know, government, politics, and religion. But at the same time, they have their own agenda. Because guess, again, they're riding on the shoulders. These corporations are right there with the government. They're making the decisions of, you know, how they're going to make all this money. The government gives them passes on all of these various taxes and 401ks and all of that, that, you know, they got the minds of people thinking that's the way to go. No, the corporations benefit greatly from the 401k. The little bit that they pay into your 401k is nothing. It's crap. They get to write all of that off. Trust me. It's to their benefit. It's just more money for them. So they're doing all of those things. The tax breaks come to the corporations, not to the individual. So understanding all of these things, again, the lack of knowledge, you know, which we know our people suffer from, is what causes people to think and do what they do and think that they're following the right path. All right. Anyone else on that? All right. So what are some of the top issues and concerns you see with the world today? You know, what are your perspectives with these issues and concerns, and how do you believe Yahuah in Yahusha is addressing this?
I think the issues that I'm more concerned with is just people, they don't have for the most part that I'm saying, they don't have a caring heart, meaning that we talked about it earlier, in that how the education is screwed. And I think one of the things that I see is that I always tell parents and people that I can talk to, not parents, in terms of the parents I know are going to go back and tell I never talked to them about that. But the parents I know that'll understand where I'm coming from, education is not meant for success. Because if it was meant for success, we would do it differently, but we would also put more money into it. And so those are kind of the issues I have. My perspective on it is I understand why everyone can't be educated, because we need poor people. And when I say we need poor people, this government, this systems, it needs poor people to feed off of in order for them to continue money, rulership, and all of those things. I think Yahuah. Go ahead.
So don't say we need it. They need it. They need it for their agenda.
They need it for their agenda to you know, pushing their agenda. I think Yahuah is dealing with it in that this plan of salvation is going to work itself to where, it's going to work itself out. And he's also sending us into the world to continue to speak to those who have an ear to hear and eyes to see. And he's going to bring this system on the shoulders of Yahusha. And so I think he's addressing it in his time, and it'll be addressed, which I trust that. But I just think that, you know, when we have the perspective of always, when they have the perspective of always destroying their fellow man, it hurts me, because I see it on a daily basis in terms of when we're dealing with our babies in the school setting. And even in the church setting, it's bad, because they're spewing false doctrine, and they know they are, but they're getting paid, so they're unwilling to do something about it. And so it's going to be up to us to do what we're supposed to do as the remnant, to speak out when it's not truth. and to stand and hold fast to all things that he's given us to do and believe in.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
I can go.
Mhm.
My top issues and concerns will be the Food Drug Administration, and I mean, people having children and having no regards to how they gonna sit there and take care of them. Um, not even willing to set their selfishness aside to sit there and think about that little human being that they trying to create. So those are my concerns. What are the perspectives with these issues? I mean, I would say the reason why these people are sitting there doing that is because they're selfish. I mean, that's what I'm gathering. Whatever it's for lust. They're thinking with a body part. They're not thinking with their mind, the mind of their consciousness or anything like that. As far as how do I believe Yahuah and Yahusha is addressing this, I would definitely have to say it would be the plan of his salvation. Within that, they're gonna have to be going through the fire and purged. I really don't know how to answer that one right now because I'm still trying to see.
Okay. Go ahead, Patrick.
I believe Yahuah is addressing it because here we are.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't addressed, we wouldn't know the truth as it is as we know today.
Exactly.
He is addressing it just on his time.
Right. Exactly. So these matters are being addressed to us as his spirit is in us, and as we address the truth in spirit and in truth, it's being addressed. And that's why it's important for us to know him in his spirit, so that those things will go forth. That's been from the beginning up until this time and till the end of his plan of salvation. It's not going to change.
Right. And also we got to remember, Yahusha said, tell them if they don't want to hear, walk away. Don't argue with them. Don't try to convince them, because their heart is not in the right place yet.
Right. They have stony hearts. They're stout-hearted. They're not trying to hear that, like what Bobby was saying earlier. We run into that oftentimes, but when we drop those seeds, it may fall on stony ground. And even with that, someone nearby or even that person, it may take root and just prosper and harvest later. It's not for us to get so ingrained in them trying to get it right then, like we often do.
It took me a long time, Zeke, to understand that we are the sowers. We're not the harvesters. We are just sowers. We're the sow to seed.
Exactly.
Not seed.
Right. So, and it's funny you say that. There's a post that I'll be putting out. I got several of them that's going to be put out. But one, just like the scripture tells us, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So many people are going to enjoy the harvest, but it was the laborers that made the difference. It's the remnant that made the difference. It's the sower of seed that makes the difference. But what's harvested is the time of the kingdom and the manifestation of all things that most people will be able to take part in when they understand the righteousness and their spirit and in truth. They will enjoy that harvest. They had nothing to do with the laboring, though. And this is where it comes back to, in the scriptures in Corinthians talking about, charity. To do the work of the Most High is nothing but charity. And those without it can't be in the kingdom. And when I say in the kingdom, I mean in the kingdom, in kingdom power and rulership and things of that nature. Those without a heart of charity and giving will not be there. They will not be in those positions. He's not going to allow that to happen. That's what got the world in the situation it's in now, from not having that, because we want to have everybody doing what only a remnant will do. People show you who they are by what they do. Most people claim to be part of the remnant and are not of the remnant. They are not the laborers. They're not laborers. They labor with their mouth, or they say things with their mouth, but they're not laboring. And most people don't see that, even from a traditions of men and religious perspective. That goes right over most people's heads. They're not looking at it from that way, because their ears are being tickled with something else that comes out of a minister's mouth or preacher's mouth, that they don't address the scriptures at all. They don't get to know who their creator is at all. And they don't know the spirit that resides in them. They think that the spirit resides that within them is the spirit of righteousness, when it's just the contrary, according to the scriptures. Just like they thought, and will flip the script on the Messiah or Mashiach of the scriptures. They flipped the script on him in the first advent, calling him a heretic. If he's the Messiah, how is he a heretic? So those when we come into the body of that supposed heretic, we get the same thing. We become called part of that. You're a heretic. You're an anti-Messiah. No, you don't know who I am. That's the problem. And you don't know who you are in your identity crisis. So the Most High is working all of these things out. But it doesn't come easy. It comes with the price to pay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So next question is, what is your understanding and definition of humanity? Does the world live according to the definition of humanity?
They don't know. I don't think the world lives according to my definition of humanity. My definition is just humans all being in accord with what the Most High God has called us to do, and loving one another, treating one another fair, and taking care of one another. So I don't think it does.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, I was thinking, or I thought humanity would be the definition of carnality. So we are to strive to be spiritual.
What? So elaborate on on your thought on that.
Because it okay, as far as when I sit there and think of humanity now, when you sit, I can see a man or a woman, they sitting there doing some satanic, mistreating somebody. But then when you sit there and check them about it, they say, well, I'm just human at the end of the day.
Okay. Right. So no, well, humanity is really about the collective of all of mankind. That's what humanity is. So the human race is of humanity.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, what happens in the spirit, if we were law-abiding citizens and doing the things that the Most High is called us to do by abiding by the two greatest commandments that all of the law and all the prophets hang upon, and humanity lived by those things, would we be experiencing what we've been seeing? Or would it be something different?
It would be something different.
Exactly. So today, and you hear the term being thrown around a lot of times about humanity and what people are doing and the morals of humanity and all these things, but we see all the division in what they call humanity. We see all of the corruption in what they call humanity. We see all of the lies in what they call humanity, because there's nothing human about the very species we're talking about in humanity that you say is the collective that we are all responsible for. If we were all responsible for those things, again, from a spiritual perspective, and this is the Most High looking out for humanity, is that we would do the right things for the right reasons in spirit and in truth. And humanity would be at one, just as it was in the beginning, because he calls the end from the beginning. And that's what the kingdom is all about, being called from the end from the beginning.
Mhm.
So a lot of times, and my point in using and talking about these things is when we have these conversations and hear people talking about various topics, and they will include these words and include their context behind it, is what you have to be careful of. Because you need to see and understand and discern the spirit in which it comes from. Because depending upon the spirit, it drives their agenda and what they will say, and make it appear to be something that it's not. Again, we spoke about this earlier about if humanity was at one with itself, nobody would have problems that they have today. The racial issues, the gender issues, the sexual orientation issues, and all of that's all part of humanity. As the one of humanity. So understanding what needs to happen from the spirit, for humanity, is not what's been transpiring under Satan's regime at all. We see that clearly. But we also see it from divisive perspectives. We see it when we're impacted directly instead of indirectly, or we see it when we don't really pay as much attention when someone else is impacted. Again, I think even in that movie, The Imitation of Life, or was it another movie? Was it that movie or another one that I saw also, that when the maid did something, or I think it was Imitation of Life, or it may have been another one, I'm not sure. Where the daughter of the maid comes to the house with all of these white women, and then the maid, who was played by Cicely Tyson, said, oh, she gets her daughter and say, oh no, well, let's go in the other room. And the uppity women, some of them were like, oh, you need to tell your maid this, or tell her to do that, or you need to fire your maid. Now the woman loved her maid, the one that had the maid, she loved her maid. But because she fell prey to what these women would think and feel, and she fell prey to everything that they said and did, and fired her maid or made her go. And because of that, when the daughter that was away at school or wherever she was, when she came back home, and she was grown, but when she came back home and asked what happened to her, where is she? Because she loved this woman who was a maid, who was black, and she was white. And she said, what happened to her? She said, I fired her. And the woman fell in tears because she realized that you did the wrong thing, but you were so busy thinking about what someone else, these other little crazy rich, bitty women would think of you if you did not fire her or whatever, that you did a very inhumane thing by letting her go. And the daughter was distraught and pissed at her mother. So when the girl goes to look for the mother, they found out, or actually the mother told her that somebody went to look for, and where she had moved to, they found out that she died, and the girl really went off. And then the mother goes into all of these tears and says, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're sorry, just a little too late, because you really could have prevented a lot of those things, and it was done out of being evil. And you could tell that the character that Cicely Tyson was playing when she left as the older Black woman maid, she held on to the door and was like, because she loved her woman, she loved the woman that hired her, as well. But she knew what she was doing. She knew why she was doing it. But Cicely Tyson didn't say anything. She just held her hand up to the door, and that was the last time they saw each other. But that woman now has to live the rest of her life with those scars of being evil, and knowing that you let a life go because of these rich bitty women that were doing unrighteousness, and caused to enter into your mind to do unrighteousness. And this is the effects of it. That's inhumane. That's not love. You can't say that you love this person and you would do that to that person. Does that make sense?
Too much.
Very much so.
Yes.
Sometimes we don't want to pay the price up front by saying, or the words I really want to use,
Go ahead.
by saying some words to those people that you're not going to participate in their foolishness or whatever, because I would have made them get out of the house. My maid would have stayed.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? I don't care what race he or she is. No, I love my maid. I love this person, and because of your acts, no, you got to go. But a lot of people don't do that. Just imagine if we did. Now, we do have people in society who have played that role. And this is a conversation I have with, Black folks all the time, is that people feel like Black people are, climbed the ladder by themselves. No, there were a lot of white people that died for the same cause that other Black folks knew and had in their spirit. You just don't hear about it. And that's a problem too. But civil rights would not have happened by Black people alone. It did not. So we have to understand that no, it's by the spirit of the person, and there's a price to pay for everything. Again, a lot of white people died because they understood and followed the ways of righteousness behind what stood behind these folks that were looking for civil rights. That's a part of humanity. Everybody should have the right to be human and do these things. Why would you say that this person is 3/5 of a man, and that's not human? That's not humanity. That makes no sense. But we know that that's what took place. And then, like I used in my example earlier, someone who subscribed to a channel, as soon as you find out that somebody's a different ethnicity or race or gender or anything else, now you want to unsubscribe and block them or whatever. Yeah, okay. People show you who they are by their spirit. Okay, I'm sorry. I can go on about that because anyway. So next question. Oh man. Do you believe the creator of the scriptures favor one group of people over another? If so, how?
I would think that he would favor those who've come out of her. and those who obey his commandments and his statutes and his laws, because that's what he said in his word. Those who obey my teachings and my laws, this is what you're going to receive. And I don't think he's saying that it's favor like we think it's favor. I think it's favor in that we've listened and learned his ways. And so the things that manifested, that he said will manifest in our lives, will manifest in our lives. But I think the remnant and those who come out of her, they have favor.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Moses, look at Abraham, look at Isaac, look at those. He favored them because they listened, and they were, and David, a man after his own heart. So I would think so.
All right. So, all right. Yeah, I don't want to lead the witness too much. But all right. So, anyone else? Do you believe that the creator of the scriptures or Yahuah favors one group of people over another? And if so,
No.
how?
I don't believe it.
You don't believe it?
I don't believe it.
Why do you say that?
Because it's a scripture that says he's not a respecter of persons.
Mm-hmm.
So based off of that alone, leads me to believe that he doesn't favor one group of particular people.
All right. So, and we're going to be talking about this tomorrow with the lesson, but so you're right as far as the scripture is concerned, and Christians will spew that too, but yet they do it from a carnal perspective or a unrighteous perspective. So now let's combine what Bobby said and what you said. Bobby just said, and according to the scriptures, David had favor, Abraham had favor, Abel and Seth had favor, Jacob has favor.
It was the action involved though, for that to happen. It was an action they had to take for them to have favor of the Most High.
Right. So then he does have favor over what?
His son.
Why would he have? So take the two things together, because this is where I just want y'all to think. So using what you just said, with both the scripture, that he's not a respecter of person, but yet he has favor for these people. How is that so?
Obedience over my Lord's statutes commandment.
Huh? Come on, this should be easy for y'all.
No, I say obedience. Having obedience over doing the law, statute, and commandment, coming out of her, going through doing the salvation plan, knowing why the reason why you're here. There are certain things you have to do. There are actions where you have to do for Father to favor you.
All right. So his favor is in us being of the same one spirit of righteousness. That's his favor. He does not have favor over unrighteousness.
Never will.
Exactly. So now a lot of people will confuse that and make it about race and make it about gender and make it about all these other things. No, his favor is about righteousness in spirit and in truth.
Mm-hmm.
So when we identify all those things with those biblical characters that he shows favor for, and the reason why Jacob was the apple of his eye, and understanding why Jacob becomes the apple of his eye, and seeing where the favor is and who Jacob becomes, is why he has favor.
Mm-hmm.
Are we getting that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Y'all are quiet.
Yeah, they quiet.
Y'all don't want to hear it. Y'all ain't trying to hear this.
I am attentive and listening. Please trust and believe that. You know that.
Y'all don't want to hear this stuff.
I want to hear it. Let's get it.
No, but yeah, we definitely need to know that the Most High does have favor over people of his spirit. That's where the favor is. Carnality will make you think that he has favor over different groups of people that are of a different, specific to nature. Now he has put in plan certain things where a spirit would be in different groups of people at different times. And that's what most people don't want to see or understand it either. So when we identify the spirit of when you can identify who the spirit of Esau is and the spirit of Jacob and what Jacob has done, and then all of the underlying biblical characters and the spirit that they possess, then you begin to know who your creator is, which most do not. They try to trace all these things back from a very natural and carnal perspective, making it about race and ethnicity. Well, a lot of people of all races are righteous. There are a lot of people of all races that are unrighteous. That's part of his plan of salvation as well. So then who is Israel? Who is Jacob? Who are the 12 tribes? There's a lot of conversation out there about who the 12 tribes are. Again, this goes back to our identity crisis in spirit and our identity, which most people look for first, is in the natural. Your natural does not drive your spirit. Just because you're black or just because you're white does not mean that you're going to be with the Most High by any means. So we need to understand that. And that's a hard lesson and hard truth for most people to deal with. All right. So number 11, from your understanding of the scriptures, what do you believe Yahuah is most at odds with regarding this world? Well, I just really spoke about that in a sense. But if you guys go ahead.
Disobedience.
Right. Okay. And okay. Anything more? Anything else?
The unbelief, the disobedience, the way we treat one another.
Lack of faith too.
Lack of faith in.
Exactly.
And then
So
they
you
want
see
stuff done now.
So do you see how all of these things play into our identity and our identity crisis as well?
Yes.
Think about yourself and how you may have mistreated somebody within your life that you didn't treat the way you want to be treated. Because we've all done it. I'm sure. If you're honest with yourself, you have said or done something to someone that was not in the manner in which you really wanted to be treated. And that's a problem. We should be reasonable and address those things within ourselves and repent. And if we do wrong someone in those manners, we should be more than willing to repent and move forward. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And guess what? Yes. And that's how I see me. That's why I try not to pass judgment on people. I try to see the good in everybody, as we were talking earlier this week. But I passed judgment on some people, and I was judgmental, and that's not a good feeling. On the flip side of that, because that was evil and wickedness that was in me, that it don't feel good. So I try not to do that to anybody, because I see now how that, that's not good. It's not good at all.
Right. See, and that's part of the perfection that we had even in the beginning that's being restored to you now, is that when you can identify those things, it's not that you're not going to do something that's going to be wrong per se, and you know, that you may have said something to somebody that may hurt their feelings, or that you know, like I use the example of, you know, when I'm driving, and you know, some of the things I say when I'm driving um is, you know, is questionable at times. No, it's it's
Some of the things I even did is
want to say
Huh?
shame on you. Shame on you.
I said some of the things
Exactly.
did when it came to that road rage question.
Yeah, see, yeah, that road rage or certain things that provoke you to say different things. Um, you know, I call people all kinds of names when they do a stupid move, or you know, things of that nature. But I will also repent and, you know, not hold it against them if they're you know, if they recognize and see that they've done something wrong, like the example I gave a few weeks ago of the woman in the parking lot. Where I could not have held it against her at that point. You know, she was sorry for the action that she took, and she didn't, you know, she didn't see, you know, me coming that way or whatever, and made a bad move. But I couldn't be mad at her. Now you see some people will be mad and get out and probably shoot her, which is crazy. So, you know, and that's imperfection. That's what we are supposed to.
Nothing. You not. No. You can't bring anything. We're going to see. We're going to see.
Hold on. Mute your phone, Bobby. Mute your phone. But yeah, so that's what we're supposed to do. And acknowledging one another. It doesn't mean that things won't happen in life and everything's just what man thinks is perfect. The perfection is being able to have the righteousness within you to do the right thing by apologizing and accepting the apology and moving forward. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It
It
does.
sounds like accountability. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So, number 12. What are some carnal ways that you've seen taught and lived amongst societies that are contrary to what the scriptures are teaching?
That being fruitful and multiplying. Seriously.
What about it?
It is literally people that think when the Most High is talking about being fruitful and multiply, he is talking about the physical aspect of intercourse and stuff like that. And I have to let them know he's a spirit. So that ain't what he's talking about at all when he's talking about being fruitful and multiplying.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't understand that, along with many other aspects of the scriptures, and what, you know, being fruitful is and multiplying is multiplying of his spirit, and his fruits. And he's the fruit, you know, the fruit of the spirits are what? In Galatians 5:22-23, you know, as I always point out. Right. The love, joy, peace, all of the things that bring forth salvation. All of those things with the fruits of his spirit brings forth what is to come, which is this time of the kingdom on earth. Without those things, there would be no kingdom on earth. And there's many things that have to come to pass that a price is paid for that kingdom to come on earth as it is in heaven. All right. So what are some other carnal ways?
Fornication, adultery.
Right. What they think is fornication is not the fornication of the scriptures. Adultery. Right. What they think is circumcision from a natural carnal perspective is not the circumcision that the Most High is speaking to.
Baptism.
Huh?
Baptism.
Oh, I'm sorry. Say it again.
Marriage.
Yeah, marriage. And what did you say, Latricia?
I said marriage.
Oh, okay.
Baptism.
Yeah, baptism. Exactly. So we're gonna touch on some of those things tomorrow, but I'm going to have other lessons that talk a lot more about that as well. Diving into a lot of these things, because there are a lot of teachings out there that are teaching incorrectly, about, the Most High's dietary plan as far as clean and unclean foods, understanding what that is. Because they will have you not eating certain things or whatever. And when he's speaking these things in the spirit, understanding what he's talking about from a spiritual perspective.
A big one is Yahusha being a literal man.
Exactly. Right. So not understanding plurality and singularity is a huge part of the misconception of what's been taught and most people think.
The cross too.
Exactly. Anything else? There's many
The
more,
holy
but
feast days. The holy feast days.
As being carnal?
Many people believe that they can keep the feast days carnally from the perspective.
Okay, keeping them carnal. Okay.
Yeah.
You had me concerned there for a second.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, even the ones that believe, because a lot of people don't even think about the holy feast days, but those that do, you're right. Some of them want to try to keep those things carnally according to man's pagan calendars and things of that nature. Yeah. All right. And there's several others, but you guys are seeing that, which is good. That's a great thing. All right. So then the last question is, do you believe you play a significant role in making a positive difference in what Yahuah has called his people to do? If so, how? And if not, why not?
I think I do because of where I'm at right now. I'm in a different place right now as far as talking with different people because I feel like he put us where, as my character Jonah would go and speak to different ones. I feel that he give us the spirit to be able to talk to different people at said different places. Where is it that for me, I wouldn't be able to go to talk to the people at the White House, but I could talk to the people here where I'm at, because I encounter a lot of times, I see a lot of homeless people, women that's having a whole lot of issues going on. And I feel like with what I've went through in my life, that I can speak to them and share some of my story with them to help them to overcome.
Okay. Good. Anyone else?
I don't like to go. I say I would like to go.
Okay.
For me, I definitely can see a significant role in me being a light, because I don't let whatever I'm going through or my circumstances let it define me. So, like, for instance, as far as me being sexually assaulted, I try to be that voice of reasoning or voice of reason to other females that have went through that, to sit there and show them, like, there is a light at the end of the tunnel if you sit there and follow that remnant protocol.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
I would like to say I get to understand this walk is not a carnal walk, but a spiritual one. It was never about the carnalness where we've been in church and all this other thing, but spiritual.
Right. Okay.
Next thing to, as we always say, to discerning the spirit by the spirit. you could actually get to know if a person for Yahuah or a person not for Yahuah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
Well, as a means of being a part of the body of Yahusha, it is our job that as the Messiah has given us to heal the sick, cast out devils, raise the dead, cleanse the leper, and do all of these things as a means of being our brother's keeper, as a means of bringing Jacob back to the Father, amongst many others.
So that's how you believe you play a significant role? Or I mean,
Yeah, as the body of Yahusha, yeah, to be our brother's keeper.
okay. All right. Anyone else? All right, cool. Well, that's all that I had for today. And really, well, and just the last thing was just always reiterating, Yahuwah's ways are not man's ways. Isaiah 55:7-9. So seek you, Yahuwah, while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. And let him return unto Yahuwah, and he will have mercy upon him, and to our Elohim, for he will abundantly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, says Yahuwah. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And when we keep that in the forefront of our minds and in our understanding, then we can keep the two greatest commandments, and we will do right by his will, and will play a significant role of what we are to do as a member of his body. Does that make sense?
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Exactly. Exactly. Good, good. So that's all I had for today. Like I said, tomorrow, I'll send out an invite for tomorrow for us to finish carnality and spirituality, and in the lesson portion of it, and then we'll move forward and finish hopefully autobiography, the last part of the Yahuwah's autobiography and autograph, and then move into the truth regarding the Garden of Eden. I do want you guys to be prepared tomorrow after we finish carnality and spirituality to talk about your homework assignment before regarding reading your preface of the Bible and speaking on the things that you found to be, or just speaking on the things that you found in the preface of your Bibles.
Did you
All right.
get mine? See,
Yes, I got your email. Yes.
did you get mine? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So any thoughts, any questions, anything anyone would like to bring up at this time before we
I
finish?
would like to know the homework that you gave out before, so I
Mhm.
can kind of try to I guess jump in. I mean,
Okay.
I feel like I'm on a roller coaster ride, but I still would like some study stuff.
Oh yeah. So there's a lot. Well, definitely don't feel overwhelmed, because it will be overwhelming some with a lot of the information and things that we talk about and teach. But I'll email you the actual assignment of reading the preface of your Bible to just be able to speak on some of those things, because we'll cover some of that in the third part of Yahuwah's autobiography and autograph. The first two parts are out there on the YouTube website, but we haven't recorded the third part yet, which we're going to go over next week.
Okay. I'll go onto YouTube as well, and I'll
Okay.
look for the email. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Anything? Anyone else? Anything?
Oh, can I talk to y'all about the food poisoning and stuff right quick? Y'all,
Sure.
please be careful out there, because like I received an email day before yesterday from items that I had purchased from Walmart or whatever, right? Back from the beginning of this year, and they was telling me they had arsenic in it and it was recalled. Please, y'all, be careful out here.
Yeah. And in addition to that, I know who told me just the other day as well is that there's a recall on boars, some of the processed meats from boars that also called wisteria. It caused 9 people to die recently. So if you have any boar's head processed meat, be very careful or probably throw it out at this point. I have to look and see which ones, because I don't know which specific meats caused this wisteria that caused 9 people to die, but just be mindful of that as well. All right.
Oh, and also the rice has levels of arsenic in it as well. So y'all be careful about that.
Ugh. It's almost impossible to eat in this country because it's so crazy. It's crazy.
Which rice was it?
Some white rice. I don't know